was a pretty solid first breakout as well. Mayor, is John Julius here?
I am.
There he is. Awesome. Johnny, good to see you. Just went on mute.
Great to see you.
You as well, buddy. Good to see you. All right, I'm going to do a quick intro, and then I want to make sure that we give John as much time as we can. So, John Julius, I've known John for probably 20 years now, which is crazy. As I mentioned, I've shared the stage with John a few times. We hired John to come in and teach us at 1-800-GOT-JUNK and all of our franchisees. I've sat in audiences and watched him and scribbled pages of notes. I've always been blown away by his content and his delivery as well. So real quick bio on John, and then we're actually going to jump into a session together. John redefined customer service in corporate America. He didn't read books on customer service, he wrote them. One of the most captivating and charismatic speakers today, John's keynotes and workshops are used by world-class service companies to provide unforgettable customer service every day. He's taken that same mindset to enhance the employee experience and is currently writing a book on the employee experience revolution. As the authority on world-class customer service, organizations across America use his philosophies and systems for creating world-class service. He's worked with companies such as the Ritz-Carlton, Lexus, Starbucks, Nordstrom, Panera Bread, Nestle, Marriott Hotels, PwC, the Cheesecake Factory, Progressive Insurance, Harley-Davidson, State Farm, Chick-fil-A, and many more. And those are some amazing brands that really get customer service as well. He's also worked with them to continually raise the bar and set the standard in a service that consistently exceeds expectations. So, John, you and I are going to do a bit of a fireside chat today, but before we kind of jump into questions, do you want to just start us off even with a few minutes, just maybe a few minutes off the top of your head, like I don't know whether it's a rant or just give us a brief overview on where we're going to be going?
Yeah. You got me at a great time. I just got back from a sabbatical where I was finishing the manuscript for the employee experience revolution. So I am fired up with a bunch of information, and it's just kind of what's gone on since the pandemic, but it started in 2010, right? We just came off one of the longest stretches of economic boom in the U.S. history, which tends to make us a little fat, a little lazy, I think, as leaders, and when the busy bus is out front, if you're a retailer and it's the holiday season, you start cutting corners. And I find that we do that when business is booming, both to our customers and our employees. So it was a wake-up call for all of us. And I think we got to get back to the basics and do what's right. Remember why we built businesses, and be careful not to get greedy when doing all this.
And what do you think are some of the core things that people are doing right now?
Right, man, that's hard. I think what they're doing right is revaluing everything that needs to be looked at. That again, when even a turkey can fly in a tornado, right? And from 2010 till the beginning of 2022, that was a tornado. But when whether it's a recession, a pandemic, you name it, hits, that tornado stops and a lot of turkeys start falling, right? I've always liked, as a business owner, I've always liked a recession or a crisis, and none of my businesses do better in recessionary times. Why I like it is because my competition does so much worse, and so that's really when we can lap our competition if they weren't built for this. I like to call a crisis, a pandemic, a recession, a business enema. right? It does a good cleansing of the shit competitors who are out there, hanging a shingle, giving us a bad reputation.
So where do you think we are right now in terms of like, are we in a recession? Are we headed into a recession? And I guess on the same vein, if people think we're not in a recession, we're certainly not in a boom, right? But
Right.
where do you think we are, and what does that mean for businesses right now?
So I'm sure you've heard this, Cameron. One of my favorite quotes around the recession is financial experts have successfully predicted the last 9 out of 4 recessions, right? Which means no one knows. All I can tell you is we've been in a recession for over 2 years, a customer service recession, and everyone on this call listening on both sides of the fence, as a leader, we feel it, we know it, we feel guilty about it, and as a customer, client, consumer, we've been experiencing it. So according to the American Customer Satisfaction Index, ASCI, they measure every industry, and we're at over a 20-year low in customer satisfaction in all industries, and it's just dropping. And again, I doubt anyone is shocked at this because you've been experiencing it yourself. Why? When the pandemic hit, we had, the burnout, and we had, the professional awakening, staff shortages, supply chain issues. I mean, just everything. On top of that, a lot of industries got busier. Inflation and supply chain issues caused prices to go up. So we're now charging you more and giving you less. Right? That doesn't make. And then there's shrinkflation. Cameron, you've heard of shrinkflation?
No.
Shrinkflation is what all the product companies. Go ahead.
Is it like stagflation?
No, it's a clever way, a devious way that, like Procter and Gamble and your Doritos, you buy now have 4 less Doritos in them. So it's a way of raising your price without you realizing that you're not paying more, but you're getting less. So yeah. all that is just really have angered people. But there's a huge opportunity, right? And the opportunity is the few that focus on the customer experience, which starts with the employee experience. They crush their competition. I mean, irrefutable evidence on the financial impact.
John, we just noticed something tonight. My wife and I are over in Dubai right now, and we had dinner at a restaurant at the new Atlantis, the Royal hotel that they built over here, which is ridiculously, I don't know how 6-star, like it's crazy. But every single employee that we interacted with at that place tonight blew us away, bar none. Whether it was the doorman or the valets or the woman at the cashier or the hostesses, or like, it was person after person after person after person that was incredible for the staffing.
And you bring up a great point, Cameron. Sorry. What they don't suffer from, the restaurant you enjoyed, is employee roulette, right? Employee roulette is when your level of experience is dependent on which employee you get. That didn't happen tonight. Everyone you came in contact with crushed it. But most businesses, it's like, Cameron, who'd you get from my company? You got Denise. Oh, I feel good. Oh, you got Nicole. I hope she was having a good day, or I hope she wasn't fighting with her boyfriend, or, whatever that may look like. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump on you.
No, it's good. And I think, I guess I'm curious, why do you think in North American companies we've allowed our customer service to get so bad? Or is that where this, employee experience revolution that you're talking about has to start to change things? What's happening there?
I think it starts with greed. I think, the old Milton Friedman, capitalism and your only, thing is to the shareholder. I think that, is taken too literally, and look at all the, we're almost numb to the businesses, from the Enrons of the world to BPs to WeWork and Uber and Theranos, and all this has just become the norm. And I hope it's not the norm, but it feels like the norm. And we got to get back to building great companies that help improve people's lives, right? And then the rest comes. But I think, putting Jack Welch on a pedestal, 30 years ago wasn't probably the hindsight wasn't the greatest role model we needed.
I would agree. All right, talk to us about the employee experience revolution. What are you working on? What's kind of the genesis of this, and where are we going to start learning from?
Yeah, so the definition to is great brands are born to help people live extraordinary lives, right? Great leaders inspire their employees to build lives of meaning and purpose. And as a result, they help their employees and customers reach their fullest potential. And then everything else will follow. So, talking about it, we're looking at everything needs to be an experience. Your recruitment experience, your onboarding experience needs to be an experience. And it's different than 5, 10, 15 years ago. If someone was coming to interview at your company or my company, Cameron, chances are, I feel 5, 10, 15 years ago, they might have heard from someone, hey, this is a great company. They come, they interview, they hope they get the job. I think today, because it is an employee market, they're interviewing at 5, 6, 8 places looking for the best deal. Now, the best deal is dependent on them and what they think, but we have to be a position that, wherever they go before or after our interview has to pale in comparison, right? And so that's kind of what, BX Strong is something we call brand experience strong. And that means you got to have an ecosystem of experiences to your vendors, obviously to your clients, to your employees, to everyone. And so each thing has to be an experience.
I was just thinking about what you're saying about with the experience. I know we're going to talk about the employee side right now, but I heard a really interesting story that I think will illustrate this point. Before I tell the story, I'd like all of you in the chat to write down on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, how strong would you rate your company's employee onboarding experience? Okay, what are the customer or employee onboarding? How would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10? Let's see where you rank. And I'm going to tell you the story right now. At Airbnb, Brian Chesney sat down with the leadership team one day and he said, how well would we rank our average Airbnb experience? And they were like 6s or 7s, right? Kind of where we are right now. And I really want you, this is what Jim Collins talks about, confronting the brutal facts. So I'm even going to take somebody like, Nicole, who's got an 8.5, and Mike Sanfiorenzo at an 8, and Jordan Marksbury at a 9 or a 10. Jordan will be a perfect one, right? Because I know Jordan well enough that we can kind of poke fun at each other. So Jordan, just for fun, right? If you were to take your 9 and 10 and talk about what that experience is with employee onboarding, well, what would you do if your new employee, was your sister? How well would you, or if it was somebody you were recruiting away from a customer, or if it's a 9 or a 10 now, what could you do to make it an 11? And what would you do if the media was covering, the onboarding and they were going to write about it? How could you take it to the next level? Or what would you do if you were videoing the entire onboarding and you were going to post it on YouTube for people to say, what would that experience be? And they were talking about, what would the Airbnb guest experience be? Well, it's the Nespresso pods and the extra towels or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, but what if it was like an 11 out of 10? They're like, oh, we'd go to the airport and we'd pick them up. What if it was like a 12 out of 10? Oh, fuck, we'd have Elon Musk drive to the airport and pick them up, and Elon would bring them to the Airbnb, right? You can always take something to the next level. And I think we often miss on that opportunity. So I think that's where John's going to take us today, is taking wherever our numbers are right now. I think we have to take whatever we gave ourselves and we now have to call it a 0 out of 10. However good we were 5 minutes ago, we're now at a 0. And everything we learn in the next 3 hours is what's going to get us either back to the number we're at or approaching 9 or 10. So John, why don't you walk us through some of the basics of what a great employee onboarding experience is going to be?
Yeah, a couple of things is, I think the 2 biggest mistakes companies have been making, myself included, the past 2 years is hiring just anyone to replace, people we lost, and keeping poor performers, because I need 6 more. Last thing I want to do is get rid of Cameron. I mean, even though I may want to, I don't want to have to hire 7, right? And that is bad. And there's a quote I know everyone's heard on this. There was a leadership epiphany for me, Cameron. It's one of my favorite quotes. I've said it nauseum to my new employees and my 3 boys. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? You've heard it?
Yep.
And you agree with it?
100%. I think your weight is the average of the 5 people, your fitness level, your wealth,
Yeah,
your
100%.
all
right,
it.
so let me ask you, if my son Johnny is choosing undesirables, hanging out with people who tell him, let's blow off class, let's, whatever, all those things, let's blow off practice, workout, all that. Who do we typically hold responsible for the 5 people? In this case, my son Johnny, right? He's choosing his 5 people, right?
Yep.
100% agree. Here's my leadership epiphany. Our employees don't get to choose their 5. We do for them. And that really, really, I literally lost sleep one night that if I'm keeping toxic people, if I'm keeping people that have quit and stayed, and I got a rock star on my team or several, one of 2 things is going to happen. The better thing for the rock stars, they get the hell out of there because they don't like working with B and C and poor attitude. But the worst thing is that rock star stays and gravitates to the average of the 5 people I have him working with. And then we're saying, man, what happened to Cameron? He has a bad, he used to be really good, but and we're blaming Cameron. So, that really bothered me that our employees don't get to choose their average of 5. One other thing before I get this recruitment experience that, I don't know about you, Cameron, but me personally as a leader and, motivational speaker, all those buckets, I was annoyed initially with the great resignation and the quiet quitting and the canceling of a culture. Like, how can you cancel that word? Like, to me, it's everything you've done. It's everything I've done. It's everything I preach to my boys, show up early, stay late, outwork everyone, all those things. And I was annoyed. And I didn't want to get on the millennial and Z bandwagon and criticize them like everyone does. I mean, our generation's the one that raised them, so I don't know why we'd be, criticizing them. But the other thing was I started doing research to see where they're coming from. And, it was another learning point. Listen, they had a front row seat watching their parents or grandparents work their tail off, work 50, 60, 70 hours a week, sometimes only to get laid off, sometimes, to end up, without anything at the end of the day, hospitalization, working way past retirement, maybe working till the day they died. That's a portion that, let's say, didn't technically pay off financially. Now there's another portion of kids, millennials and Zs, that watch their parents or grandparents crush it financially. It did pay off, but as you and I both know, there's collateral damage when you're super successful, and it's usually relationships at home. And, who's to say that they're wrong? Who's to say that, me and you and our mentality that we were, raised on, was wrong. So we have to be a little bit more open-minded. So I don't know if you had any take on that before I get into the.
Well, one part that you mentioned with, the A player hanging out with a bunch of toxic, negative B's and C's, and the A player regresses to the mean a little bit. The other thing that I've seen happen as well, the A player finally says, "Fuck this, I'm out."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the A player quits because he doesn't want to work with a bunch of B's and C's. And now you've spent all your time trying to help the B's and C's, and you've lost your A. Right. And instead, what we need to do is give our grain to the best horses, right? We need to spend more time with our A players, more time with our B players, and we need to get rid of the C players.
Right.
That's the easiest way to increase your employee net promoter score is fire your negative employees or get them to quit or pay them to quit. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I asked you what companies
recruitment experience.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, so several things here. Like I said, you remember. I like the example that you gave that you pretend it's going to be on 60 Minutes tonight, because basically it is, as far as they're going and they're comparing, 3, 4 other companies they're interviewing. So the first thing is, how do you make it an amazing interview? And the interview process starts long before the first interview, right? How are you branding your company? And if you go to most companies, you look at their career page, they kind of all sound the same, right? And here's our core values. I don't think anyone's ever said, "Oh my God, one of your core values is respect. I want to come work for you." I mean, Enron's core value is ethics, and I look at that. So but companies like Atlassian, I use our good friend Arnie Mulham from CJ Advertising. If you go to Atlassian's website or YouTube it, Atlassian's core value video, or you go to CJ Advertising on YouTube. He sold the company, but when you used to go to his website, I love those things, because they made their culture so black and white, it either turns you on or turns you off. And it turned probably the majority of people off, which is great, right? Cameron, if you see right now, hey, God bless John, I wish him luck, but that's just not a place I would feel comfortable in. Thank God, right? Instead of you coming in and spending, 3-4 hours interviewing, and maybe we still don't, show you what's behind the curtain. And then 3 months from now, you're like, "Oh, dude, no, thank you." So Atlassian, they have this great video, and I could send you the links for your people. And so I think everything you're branding really has to be repetitious and clear. I think you also have to make your interview process ungameable. People are good at interviewing. They may not be good at their job. And what I mean by this is, Cameron, if you're interviewing me today, and I'm pretty sure you're going to ask me a typical interview, not necessarily Cameron, but a typical interview is going to say, "Hey, can you tell us what your 2 drawbacks are?" And I'm going to pause. I'm going to act like I'm thinking, and I'm going to say, "I'm a perfectionist and I'm a workaholic," right? Bam, I nailed that, right? There's certain questions you're going to get. So the best companies do an interview process that the candidates don't know what they're truly being judged on. So I'll give you some good examples. One that a lot of great companies do that we now do is, instead, on the first round of interview, okay, instead of interviewing 6 different people, 6 different times, spending 6 hours, they interview all of them on the first interview. So it's now 1 hour. And then they'll go around the room and say, "Cameron, tell us a story when you went above and beyond." And everyone has to answer the same question. And the interview candidate thinks that the person who has the best answer is going to, win that question. Well, what the interviewer is really looking for is, what are the other people doing when Cameron's talking, right? What's Cameron doing? Cameron's checking his Apple Watch. He's totally out of it, or he's focused on what he's going to say next, or he's looking at the girl next to him, and she just said something funny. He smiled and laughed and made her feel comfortable, right? So those are some great things. Counting. Go ahead if you want to jump in.
No, I just actually dropped into the chat a system or playbook on how to run a group interview when you have multiple candidates being interviewed by one person at your company, either over Zoom or in person. We were doing those for I guess we learned it from a company in Montreal called Mad Science back in the late 90s. Been doing it at 1-800-GOT-JUNK ever since. No, I think you're on some good stuff here. Keep going.
Yeah. And so I'm sure you've heard of Jesse Cole, Savannah Bananas.
Savannah Bananas, yep.
I mean, they are just blowing up. He makes his candidates do a video cover letter, okay, and gives you a little not that much, but just says, all right, send us a cover letter. And then you get to see how much work they put into it. Like the one he sent me, the young girl, I think she was going to give out tickets. She went to the stadium where their stadium, filmed it, and talked about why she'd be a perfect job, fit for this company. And she had the music, Take Me Out to the Ballpark playing behind it. But just by watching that video, you could say, they just mailed it in. That was like nothing, or she was really creative and, got it and learned some of our core values. A lot of really good things like that. We have, one of the things we train is the 5 E's when you deliver it. So the 5 E's is, if you're face-to-face with someone, is eye contact, enthusiastic greet, ear-to-ear smile, engage, and educate. Okay. So now we also count that on the interview process. Okay. See how many times you make eye contact. See how many times, you smile. Now, I really want to preface this. Do not do this unless you are 100% sure your interviewer is showing those signs, right? If I'm interviewing Cameron, I'm smiling, I'm like, hey, Cameron, I see that you like horseback riding. Tell me about that, right? If I'm doing that and Cameron's, stone cold stoic, I can hold them a little bit more accountable. But if I don't possess those, you can't put it on the interviewee to possess those. So it's a great tactic as long as you know that the person doing the interview is possessing those 5 E's. So that's another, really good tactic.
Something you mentioned around just the interviewing questions that I find, I heard an interesting system recently, and I think it's incredible. And companies will give the core interview questions to the candidate in advance. And they'll be like, look, I don't want this to be a stress test. I want you to come in and have a real conversation with us. So here's what we're going to cover. Here's the core questions we're going to talk about. Prep as much as you want. The reality is, in the interview, it's all about the probing questions you ask anyway. Right? It's all about
the
watching your body language. It's all about the connection. So that's interesting. Second thing is the video submission. What I really love about the video submission at the very beginning of the pre-screening is it actually gets, I call it reversing the sell. We're not going to sell you on how great the company is. You've got to start selling us on how much you want to work here and why you think you're a great fit and how you're going to make our vivid vision come true. And you get the candidate right from the get-go to start selling themselves on the company if they read your vivid vision and where they see themselves fitting into it. And it can be a real powerful way to actually reverse the sales process. So you don't have to sell them on how great the company is. Just by the act of them reading the vivid vision and then them sending you a 3-minute video, they've sold themselves on the whole company. We have to stop acting desperate, right? And it's like, I saw a sign the other day. It said, we're hiring, which isn't unusual. It listed the positions, which had to be every position in the building, which made it it was scary. But the worst thing about it is no drug testing. I mean, that was on the sign that we're hiring. We don't drug test. It's like, oh my God. I've had people say, I've gone in to fill out an application. They say, you don't have to. You do not have to finish filling out that application. And I like what you're saying, Cameron, and we've always tried it. We'll say, Cameron, are you interviewing other places? And typically whether they are or they're not, to say no. Oh, Cameron, we think you should. And the candidate cannot, and that's where the reversing of the sale. Cameron, this is going to take 3 to 4 weeks, 3 to 4 interviews. We want to make sure, you do everything to make sure it's right fit for you. And we do everything because, again, in 3 months, we don't want to be starting over. So this is your job. And they are like, they went in just thinking it was, going to be, let's see how that, and then they're selling us. They can't believe that we're asking them to go other places. A couple more things I think you'll really like. Oh, Cameron, I don't know how many people are old enough to remember Columbo, but that's kind of my interview style is, you sit down, I'm like, hey, Cameron, before we get started, before the interview starts, I see that you're from, or, find something, and you think we just went down a rabbit hole and we're just BSing. That's the interview.
right? Because that, like you said, will tell me all I want to know about Cameron. Hey, you played basketball. Yeah, the coach was a jerk. He cut me. He played his son over me, whatever. Or, those types of things. When the guard is let down, you find out what real people are really like. But some of my other favorite recruiting experiences is finding out if they kiss up and kick down. Right. So kissing up is, oh, you're Cameron. Hey, a pleasure to meet you, Cameron. But it is. But how did he treat the receptionist? How did he treat, who he thought was maintenance? There's some funny one that the CEO picked him up at the airport, but didn't know. And he was in, and some people just let him pick up the luggage, didn't even help. And then, they come in and then the CEO comes out. And, and some people were totally embarrassed because they treated him like an Uber driver or something. My favorite one is by Walter Bettinger, the CEO, Charles Schwab. If he's involved in an interview, that means it's a high level, probably C-suite position. He has you meet him at his favorite diner, and it's called the wrong order test. And anything the candidate orders, the diner knows to screw up. Whatever you order, scrambled eggs, you're probably getting French toast, right? You order coffee, you're getting orange juice. But it's just to see how people react in a high pressure situation.
Wow.
I love it. It's so cool.
That's wicked awesome.
Yeah.
Interviewing is a really interesting skill. I just want to ask a quick question before we go to the next part with John, but I'd like all of you just to write in the chat the simple yes or no. Have you spent at least 1 hour being trained on how to do proper job interviews? So have you received at least an hour's training on how to, and this is not you've done 100 interviews, but actually have you had at least an hour's training? Wow, that's like half of you have never had enough training to do interviews. And what's really scary with that is all of you do job interviews. Business is not difficult. We make business really, really difficult on ourselves because we don't have the core skills to actually do this kind of stuff. One of my favorite interview questions that I ask, and it helps in the onboarding process, is at some point in the interview, I say to people, hey, just for fun, if you were to die, where would where would you, what restaurant would you want to go to in your city that you'd have an amazing meal if you knew that it was your last meal? Where would that be? And then I just asked them a couple of questions about the restaurant. What they don't know is that on day one, when they join the company a month later, at the end of the day, we hand them a gift certificate for a dinner for two at that restaurant. And we don't mention to them because they don't ever remember. Most of them never remember that we even asked about it in the interview. But we literally, and they walk home and they open this thing up and they get like a gift certificate for dinner for two at their favorite restaurant. Like, holy fuck, these guys just blew my mind, right? But the whole onboarding day starts with greeting them at the door, their name's on the whiteboard, their phone is set up, their business cards are ready, their Zoom is working, their email address is set up, they're introduced to all the people in the company. Like, you really have to wow them on day one. A friend of ours that John and I are both friends with, Jack Daly, always said, why would you ever run a going away party? When someone's quitting and leaving at your company, there's no upside to run a party. So take all the money that you would normally have for a going away party and have that as a day one party. Welcome them to the company with the same fanfare that you say leave or see you later, right? Front load that shit on day one. And then, by the way, blow them away on day one. And the morning of day two, say, by the way, whenever you quit or get fired, there's not going to be a going away party. We did that for you yesterday.
I love that.
Welcome them. So John, let's talk a little bit more about the employee onboarding experience. What do you think makes that a really solid onboarding experience for employees?
Yeah, and you really hit on so much. And again, like the interview process, the onboarding should start before their first day and knowing stuff about them, sharing it with, people that they're going to be working with, just like customer experience is won and lost in transitions, the employee experience is won and lost in transition. And, I'm sure we've all been guilty of this, but the HR person hires Cameron. Cameron basically bought the HR person, right? They meshed, loved what she was saying. But now, his first day is today, and he's in my department, and I look at him and like he's a customer, and he's like so pumped up to change the world that I don't even know, I'm not even expecting him, right? And now I'm annoyed because it's the last thing I have time to do. I don't have his Zoom. I don't have his computer. So, I mean, obviously making sure all those lists, but yeah, I think your orientation is critical. Have it. One of the best, two best practices here. I think the first one I heard from Ritz-Carlton is at their orientation, they have half the group or a percentage of the group. And we've been doing this for the past 15 years and is one of the greatest things we've ever implemented, just like how I heard it would be. Half of our employees in orientation have been working for us. So the way we do it is if you were hired in an odd year, 2017, whatever, you're going to have reorientation, 19, 21, 23, 25. If you were hired in 2018, you're going to have reorientation 20, 22, 24. So you get that. The reorientation is so cool because now you got, 50, 60% new with, 50 to 40% existing. It's like to be in a college or a high school freshman when you're nervous and you don't know anything. Well, now Cameron's been here for 6 years, right? He's a rock star. He's in my class. Now I have like a senior friend who's going to make it easier. But the other thing is the existing employees take over the orientation. And they start telling you stories. Oh, you know how lucky you are. When we started, we had to walk both ways, barefoot up a hill in snow. But they do talk about how the evolution of their business, but they get really proud. And so there's the connections. Hopefully, your orientation, my orientation class is better than it was 2 years ago. So, but most of all, it reminds the existing employees of where the company came from, what it took to get here, and where we're going. And literally within 48 hours of orientation, I will get texts and things from the existing employees saying, I forgot how awesome this company is. And they just get all re-energized. So that reorientation is awesome. I heard this from another company called Nemacolin that we've done. It's a 5-star resort, 5-diamond resort in PA. So typically, part of your orientation or a company's orientation is the policy handbook, which is code for how not to get fired, right? I mean, what an exciting part of orientation that is. Cameron, if you show up 3 times late, you're out of here. If you chew gum, you're out of here. If you do this, you're out of here. It has to be done. But how about let's change it to how to have a super successful career. But this is what we learned from Nemacolin. They used their policies and procedures and combined it in trivia, and they made it a scavenger hunt. So now employees break up as teams, and whether you have multiple locations or one location or whatever, they have to go out and they have 30 questions. And they go and it's a competition. They go and they run into a department or a location, depending on what type of your business model is, and they ask. And here's what happens every time. Existing employees recognize new employees because they walk in, they have a pen and paper. What do existing employees do? They know the answer. So they go over and say, hey, buddy, let me see who. Oh, that's her over there. She's the one who has the most sales ever in 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. So now you got to go take a picture of it. But it makes our existing employees engage with new employees because they like being right. It's fun. They also find out about policies. So in our hair salon, we have a policy that you shouldn't chew gum, right? All right, well, whatever. I don't know if that's going to be that memorable to you. You may or may not forget it. Well, instead on the scavenger hunt, you have to find out why you're not allowed to chew gum. So you got to go in there, you ask people, hey, can you tell me, oh, you want the bubblegum chewing story? Yeah. All right, well, this is what happened 28 years ago. A hairdresser was bent over a client shampooing his hair. She was chewing gum. The gum fell out of her mouth into his mouth as she was shampooing. Everyone's like, oh, oh no, yeah. And that's a true story. She actually asked for the gum back because it still had some flavor in it, right? So my point is that's a much more fun way to find out, I guess, why we shouldn't chew gum than just sit in the room and say, don't chew gum, don't be late, don't do that. So the scavenger hunt is awesome. And then something I just heard from Chick-fil-A, which we've done, I really like, is whenever someone starts a job, I don't care if they're 18 or 78, that's something they're going to talk about heavily, at least for the next 3, 4, 5 months. Hey, Cameron, I heard you got a new job. Hey, blah, blah, Christmas, holidays, out with your friends. So give them a 1 to 2 sentence articulated of how to explain their new job, right? And it becomes an advertising pitch for you, but it makes them feel better instead of I just sweep floors or I just stick widgets in boxes and they get shipped somewhere. You say it, you teach them how to say it. They're proud to say it. I'm like, oh man, that sounds like a pretty good cut. Are they hiring? So those are just some of my things.
Maybe another interesting one that we've done, and I call it kind of the letter to Santa Claus. If any of us grew up in Christian families or North American families, often we're 4 or 5 years old. We sat down with mom, we wrote a letter to Santa, we walked down to the mailbox, we put the letter in the mailbox. 6 weeks later, we're under the tree. 3 presents magically appeared, and we're like, whoa, Santa read my letter. It's like, no, your mom and dad read your letter. And if you want to find out how to create an amazing onboarding experience, ask your current employees what would have made your employee onboarding experience a 10 out of 10. And then after they give you the list of 3 or 4 things, then say what would have made it an 11? What would have made it a 12? What would have made it a 13 out of 10? And then just take all their ideas and fucking put them in place. Like, our kids know what they want under the tree, and our employees know what would make their experience better. It's often really easy for leadership teams to just do what the employees want instead of trying to figure it out for ourselves. So that would be a thought I would have on that too.
I totally agree. And I think, we forget what it's like to be a new employee. We forget what it's like to go through orientation. And the best people are the ones that just went through the interview process, say, what would have made this interview process even better? And what would have made the orientation onboarding even better while they're still in it, while it's still fresh. Something that is the best thing I think everyone on this call can do, if Cameron hasn't already told you to do it. So you find out what your overall turnover is, okay? Let's say it's 77, and depending on what industry you're in, that could be great, that could be whatever. I'm just making up a number, 77. Okay, that's the number I really am not interested in. The number I'm interested in of that 77%, where does it fall? And so I found in my businesses, we had low turnover, but our turnover, 80% of our turnover fell in the first 90 days and 2 to 5 years. And so this may or may not be applicable to you. It's all depending on your business. Well, so we had to find out, why are we losing people in the first 90 days? Because our orientation, I don't want to say it was too good, but you would go home so pumped up saying, honey, you won't believe the job, it's the greatest job. We hug each other, we go home, and maybe we set up unrealistic expectations. Then you came in, it was a job. But also during the first 90 days, you are the dumbest person that works here, right? I'd be the dumbest person that worked at your job. You'd be the dumbest at mine. And that sucks. And our new training was a fire hose that you could not possibly get it. And then you were, getting your head bitten off because you didn't know how to do something that we checked a box. He got trained on Tuesday. And so we were just setting you up for failure. So we had to slow that down, hold your hand, get you a mentor, give you little victories, meet with you 15, 30, 60, 90 days, and dramatically improve that. Then the other one, ours was 2 to 5, was because you're the middle child syndrome. We were celebrating a new employee who just went on the floor, had their best week ever. And we're celebrating the people who have been here 10 years that are just making President's Club. But kind of people that have kind of, the middle child, we stop putting things in their careers to keep them incentivized, to keep them, improving their professional development. So that's but I would, it's a really good thing to break down where your turnover is happening, and then you go in and you figure out what you could do better in those experiences.
Love it. I just dropped something else in the chat. One of the number one things that all employees want in the first 1 or 2 weeks at a new job is just a couple of friends. It's like when we started at school, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a base core human need, is to actually have friends, somebody they can go for coffee with, someone they can hang out with, somebody they can ask questions with. And it doesn't have to be in their business area. You can have somebody in marketing who becomes a friend to somebody in IT because they both play guitar together.
Yeah.
One of the key things with onboarding is to introduce them to people in the company that they're going to like, because if you match people with people they're going to like, that's critically important. I think, Vashti, we have to do a better job with CO Alliance as well, is looking to match our new members with other members that we know, not just because of industry size and the company size, but people that they're going to like hanging out with, right? Like, anyway, John, last question I've got before we let you go is, it was around your key players, around kind of your A players, your God forbid they ever quit people.
Yeah, building a
how do you create a moat? How do you?
Yeah, I think it's all the things, right? But it's to make sure, we have to start all of this with developing great leaders. And I think the last 2 years, middle management leaders have gotten the shit kicked out of them. I know mine, they finally made it to a point where they didn't think they'd ever have to do the job again. And with the turnover and all that, they're back to answering phones and restaurant GMs are waiting tables and clearing tables because they don't have enough staff. And, I think leadership has taken a reputation where, like, I felt like for the last 50 years, it was something, oh man, hopefully you can get into leadership, and how cool would that be? And I think we got to make it cool again, and we got to make it rewarding. So I think, just having our leaders squeeze every ounce of efficiency, productivity, and profit out of employee isn't rewarding for anyone. So I think, helping employees live their best lives, training the whole person. So one of our biggest things that people say why they like working is because every month, every quarter, we will offer a class on one of the 5 F's. The 5 F's is typically what is the most common thing people choose for their New Year's resolution. Okay. Fitness, finance, family, faith, and fun. Right? Those are typically things we all want to get better at. So we bring in a speaker, or there might be someone on our team that's an expert on something. But we're always offering a Zoom call, a book club, a mortgage lender coming in. We never have to pay for it, because all these people have a shot of getting 150 new clients if they do their job. But I'll tell you, in 2019, the last normal year, if you will, we had a mortgage lender come in, and anyone that was interested in buying their first house or maybe their next house, and they filled out some paper. He said, all right, young Cameron, based on your income and your credit score, blah, 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 you can afford up to a $330,000 house. You will need X amount down and this. Which was great education. But 19 people bought their first house that year. And that was really, rewarding, but it also helps them become good employees. Because if you just bought a house, you're showing up to work tomorrow. So I just think demonstrating that you care about them, mental well-being, resources. We don't, I think 2 new things as a leader, Cameron, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, that I don't think the last 2,000 years a leader's ever had to have responsibility to do this. I don't think it's ever been taught in a class, a leadership workshop, or college, is leading from a distance, right? We never had to do that before. and caring for employee well-being. I mean, those are two new things that are hard, are really hard. So I don't think we have to turn into therapists. I do think we have to be able to point to resources and say, Cameron, if you or someone in your family is struggling, here's some resources that I know of, that we can help you with, or we're going to bring someone in to, talk to the group, whoever wants it. So those are just some.
That's two great points, by the way. I think if anyone has any great resources on leading from a distance or leading via, leading remote teams, please share those in the Slack, because I think those would be great resources for us to be able to share with each other. And then just on the comment on, leaders needing to be kind of empathetic and caring for people. I think because of COVID, we maybe got woken up that we needed to, but I think the sad reality is we needed to for the last 500 years.
Yeah.
The absolute best leaders did give a shit about their people. We're waking up to it now thinking that we needed to because of COVID, but the reality was that's probably why 1-800-GOT-JUNK ranked as the #2 company in Canada to work for, is we all really gave a shit about our employees, like their personal lives, their dreams, their insecurities, their fears. And I think the more that we care about our employees, the more they'll care about our company. John, we've got a few quick questions. Do you have time for a couple of quick questions?
I am all yours.
Okay, sweet. Lacey, you're up.
I had 2 quick questions. The first one was, what were the 5 E's again?
All right, so there's 5 F's that I just went over for employees, and there's 5 E's that was for customer service. You want the 5 E's?
Yeah.
Eye contact, enthusiastic greet, ear-to-ear smile, engage and educate.
Okay.
Eye contact, enthusiastic greet, ear-to-ear smile, engage and educate.
Very good.
Okay.
And then can you go over again, like the 50% of your orientation being like current employees, the odd year versus the even year?
Yeah. So is it Lacey?
Yeah.
See, what year were you hired at your company?
2016.
Okay, you're an E. Okay. And what year are we in? 23. So you won't have to take join an orientation class. Am I muted? Am I okay? You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
You're good now. Yeah.
Okay. I'm getting something. I pounded the table and I got all these things. So Lacey, next year, 2024, in one of the months, you will have to retake orientation with our new employees. So we probably have 6 of them a year, and I don't know, the HR figures out what it is. But Lacey will be, if you're working for me, you'd be in that new employee orientation, taking it as if you never took it before. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Love that. Patricia.
Hi, thank you. I just have one question. What we give is like education. So we have a lot of teachers, and after COVID, we teach online. So we have a lot of teachers that are like part-timers. That means they have another job and they also work with us. And how can we engage them? Because they just have the time of their classes. So we get so minimum time of meetings or something like that. How can we really engage them with the company? Because those are the ones that leave the company even earlier. Yeah,
no, and that is that's something else that has kept me up at night. The lack of emotional connection that is eroding slowly over it. And so first thing is, think about pre-pandemic, what made them so close and so loyal to your brand, not just showing up to work, but there was something that would happen. And typically, I call it Keurig conversations. I call it relationships that are built in the rabbit holes. So when I see Cameron at work getting coffee and I'm like, hey, Cameron, how was your weekend? And he tells me something amazing with his wife, or something not too amazing, something bad that might be happening in his life, or a project that he's working on that is really causing him to lose sleep. Those are things that, Cameron, I can help you with that. Cameron, I'm so sorry about that. Cameron, congratulations. I can follow up with that. So now over Zoom and all this, we need to create innocuous abilities to have those rabbit holes. And typically, at least in my experiences, if we're having a company meeting, today at 12, well, we probably have, an agenda that's so thick, we won't even get through the agenda, which doesn't allow us to have those conversations. So we found we have a weekly team rally with our teams that kind of doesn't have an agenda. It does, but it's very fluid to kind of create that. And we also have our meetings that are boom, boom, boom. Where's your sales? Where's this? What are you? That's a different call. But we got to have more check-ins so you realize, oh, he's not just a boss. He's a real person. He's someone that cares. And that bothers me as a leader because the people I've hired in the past 2 years, I don't think they have the emotional connection to my brand or me that the people the previous 28 years, I know they'd walk through a fire for me. Or if you offered them a better offer or deal, they would it would be hard to get them to take it, but not the people that have been working the last 2 years for that reason.
True story. All right, Mehul.
Hey, thanks, John. Thanks, Cameron. So, John, we are a 75 people company. Everyone's working remote in India. No one stays in the same city. And our onboarding is based on a couple of videos that the CEO has done where we have the value system. But then most of the people that we are losing are the ones in the first 90 days. So is there something that we can do where we are an online company and we can get better on onboarding experience? Remote
yeah,
working?
I mean, videos are a nice piece of an onboarding, but they can't be the onboarding. Like, I don't care. Cameron does great videos. He does amazing videos, but nothing's going to be like if Cameron's on the screen telling me. Now, someone like the president, who you may not be able to get for every onboarding, I understand that, but we should be having like this. And then we go to you and you're an experienced, person, and you tell me about your rags to riches story, how you started off as, maybe when I'm starting off, which seems like a low level job, but you kicked ass, crushed it, and today you're one of the top success stories. Like that, I think it sounds like, we're saving money by doing it with video training, but I think we got to be face to face somehow.
Yeah, agreed. Awesome. Nicole, last question.
Hi, John. I have an interview process question. We currently do traditional behavioral interviews for our management consultants. We have 3 interviews. The first gauges culture fit. The second looks at experience to see if they're a fit to do the work. And then finally, we do a presentation to see how they would be in front of clients. But what we've reflected on is that it really is a reflection, and we're not getting a good gauge of how they're going to be in the job at our company moving forward. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts or suggestions on.
So what isn't working about it? Are they able to game it? Are they like, why isn't that working? Or
I think maybe not gaming, but you're not necessarily seeing the true person.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're not seeing the kind of like true level of skill that they're bringing, kind of in this management consulting area, that a discipline that we're focused in. And it's really hard to say like, oh, are you good at PowerPoint? All right, you did a presentation, it's good or bad, but we're seeing that in the presentation. But, I'm thinking maybe we need to do more of like a collaboration scenario, because we are really collaborative with our clients. So when you were talking about like looking at somebody's eye contact and things like that, that was really intriguing to me.
Yeah, no, I do like it. And we do this too, like for our consultants, they have to, when we finalize it to the last 3, they have to come in and make presentations, and we have to see how well they learned our material and all those things. So I do like that. I think you'll be able to tell they're knowledgeable, if they, are horrible at PowerPoint. Now, it also depends on how much you're willing to teach them, how much your methodology is like yours, versus you are hoping they bring a level of experience. A lot of ours, we want to teach. So their level of expertise in that isn't as important as their people skills, their preparation, asking the right questions. That's more important than them just trying to, fake it and act like, we can see through that. But we almost prefer them to be a little greener on the content, because we want them to eat ours, so that might not be apples to apples. But I do like that of doing a collaboration, seeing what they ask of the hey, you can give Nicole a call if you have 8 questions. She can help prepare you, and if they don't, what's that tell you? And what questions are they asking you in preparation? Is it the right type of questions?
Love it.
Thank you.
All right, John, let's everybody go off mute. Give John DeJulius a big round of applause, and thank you very much for sharing with us at the CEO Alliance. Super appreciative.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.